that pastors are not well cared for, and that's our responsibility. I can remember a dear friend of mine retired from the ministry. He had unfortunately chosen to stay out of Social Security. Some of you may or may not know that pastors can be in it or be out of it. He had chosen to be out of it. Ministered for many years, always in a parsonage. Retired with nothing but $5,000. That's all he had. That was a tragedy. A tragedy. He got some kind of a part-time job, moved in with his daughter, and lived out his life, and then passed away. I can remember a pastor having somebody raise the issue of retirement for him. And one of his deacons responded and said, he'll get his retirement in heaven. Well, I hope that guy gets his retirement in heaven. We have an obligation. I'll get in trouble with this one probably, but I was at a meeting one time speaking on an issue, and I brought up this subject, and I said, don't get mad at me, but I said, the truth is, missionaries today, and thank the Lord for it, are taken care of often much better than the pastor of the local church that sends them out. And I'm glad for what we finally got hold of when it comes to missionaries, that they need salary, they need work funds, they need car funds, they need insurance, they need whatever. But there are many men in local churches who don't have those things. And so I've given you a list of things that I'm going to run through, and I realize every church cannot do everything. And you might look at some of those and think, I don't think that's necessary. Well, I want you to think about it. And I'm going to challenge you as men to think about your pastor and say, I'm going to help this man get the care that he needs. We would not expect him to come and ask for an increase or ask for help. I wouldn't expect the pastor to do that. That's why there needs to be men who say, I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to help him. I might embarrass him, but I have a man here today who was one of my deacons, and he was one of those kind of men, Tom Bailey back there. He along with some others, tried to make sure that our needs were met. So, 1 Timothy 5, verses 17 and 18, I'm not going to read that, but there's a challenge there. But I am going to read, and you can see it right in front of you. But down at the bottom, here's what Paul said. 1 Corinthians 9, beginning in verse 7, he said, Who goeth a warfare any time at his own charges? Who planteth a vineyard and eateth not of the fruit thereof? Or who feedeth a flock and eateth not of the milk of the flock? Say I these things as a man? Or saith not the law the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, Thou shalt not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treadeth out the corn. Doth God take care for oxen? Or saith he it altogether for our sakes? For our sakes, no doubt. This is written, that he that ploweth should plow in hope, and he that thresheth in hope should be partakers of his hope. If we have sown unto you spiritual things, is it a great thing if we should reap your carnal things? If others be partakers of this of this power over you, are not we rather? Nevertheless, we have not used this power, but suffer all things, lest we should hinder the gospel of Christ. Do ye not know that they which minister about holy things live of the things of the temple? And they which wait at the altar are partakers with the altar? Even so the Lord hath ordained that they which preach the gospel should live of the gospel. That's a great challenge. And so I want to suggest some things to you. And again, I have no idea about the men downstairs. I don't think I have much of an idea of what any of those men receive or what happens at your church or whatever it might be. but I want to suggest some things to you. First of all, salary. The pastor's salary should be comparable to the average salary of professionals in the region. Areas are different, states are different, aren't they? And so we're not going to say every man should get this, but should be comparable to the area where he lives. And there should be annual cost of living and merit increases should be given. We should be sensitive to that. We expect that in the business world. We should be sensitive to that and to the need of the man that God has given to lead us. Housing. A man should be enabled to buy his own house. I think we're moving more and more in that direction. I'm glad we are. A parsonage is discouraged unless the church is putting aside funds that would match the equity a man would accumulate over time in a house that he might purchase. And so you have some churches say, oh, we have a parsonage. We provide housing for this man. No, he's providing a house for you. Because when he leaves, you get the house. He doesn't. And so we should do everything we can to enable a pastor to be able to buy his own house so he can build some equity and have something when he retires rather than living in a parsonage for 40 years. Think about that. And again, I don't know your situation. Insurance. Health insurance is a critical need, and as you know, very costly. Co-pays and deductibles should be taken into consideration. Christian sharing programs should be a last resort. I know there's some out there, many times men are in them, but sometimes they're not the best. We realize the more regular insurance is expensive, but I want to tell you something, we ought to think about it. We ought to do the best for our pastor. I remember early at Bible Baptist Church, we didn't have any insurance, and we laugh about it now, and but the Lord took care of us. You know, He's gracious. But it was time to hire my first assistant. And one of the men who was a deacon was the father-in-law to the fellow we were hiring. So as we were talking about him and all, he said, well, you know, he's got to have insurance. And I said, well, you know, brother, we don't have insurance. Well, it's about time you got it too. Well, thank you. It'd been nice if they had thought of that a little sooner back then, but the church was young, whatever. But you and I need to think about that. You need to be aware of what your pastor's situation is. I hope you are. Vacation, paid vacation is a necessity. Consideration should be given to the length of service at the current church and previous ministries. Now, you know, in the business world, if somebody gets vacation time, it's obviously not just, well, you just got here, so you get a week. No, well, you've been over there for 30 years, and so we're going to take that into consideration as we consider what kind of time you're going to get, et cetera, et cetera. Car allowance. Providing a car or a car allowance is important. A pastor needs to know his car will start at night and in the dead of winter. Get that message? He shouldn't be driving a junker. He gets called at all hours and has to go and whatever. He should have some confidence. I got a car that is going to start, and you and I need to be a part of making sure that happens. Retirement, Social Security, and I think more and more men are in it now. And if you're in the ministry, you ought to give some serious thought to it. But Social Security will not meet the needs of retirement. We all know that. Various plans are available for a pastor, such as 401ks and 403bs, and we should take a look at that and help our pastor to have some kind of retirement. Trips to mission fields. They will strengthen his ministry. It's not just, send them a vacation halfway around the world. No, it is not just for him to have a trip. Going to the mission field will strengthen his ministry. And it will also provide oversight of where your church money is going. He should be able to get out there and evaluate and see. And then special care should be given at Christmas, Pastor Appreciation Month, service anniversaries, etc. And then time should also be allowed, if possible, for special preaching opportunities. If he's called upon to go and preach at a camp, he ought to be able to go and, well, that's your vacation week if you're going to go preach at the camp. No. Give the man a break. going to colleges or other churches, those kinds of things. So I ran through that quickly, and I said I would do the talking. I will give you some opportunity to ask a question, to give an opinion, to say, here's what we do, whatever it might be. But I want to tell you something. We, as members of the church, are going to be held accountable by God for the way we treat our shepherd. And so we need to give serious thought to it. So I don't know where you are. I don't know what you do. I don't know what you don't do. But I'm open to conversation. Speak loudly. There's one first.
I would maybe just add two things from a tax perspective. One, a recognition that your pastor is required to pay both halves of their Social Security if they're in Social Security. All of us that work in the business world, we pay half and our employer pays half. It doesn't work that way for the pastor. They're required to pay both halves of that. So when you think of your check and it's 6.5% comes out, they're paying 15.5. The other half I would consider is maybe finding or helping them find or covering the cost of a qualified tax professional to do their tax work. It's not simple. The laws and the restrictions, like the 401k or like the Social Security regulations, are confusing. I have seen pastors that try to do it themselves and then end up with a mess and large bills that then come due later. Finding somebody that knows the tax law and the legal requirements around the pastor, the minister, the clergy, as the IRS calls it, and the rules that are there for their housing and all that stuff. I would encourage finding somebody that has that and then covering that cost, because that could be expensive, because that person may be specialized in that. And qualified tax professionals are not cheap.
Good. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it. Good thought. And a lot of people are unaware of the fact that the pastor is viewed as self-employed and therefore pays both sides of the Social Security. The 15.3 was for me. I don't know where it is now. 15.3. John had a hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Let's say you're, like, I'm in a new planted church and we are trying to take care of our pastor. And for us, he's full-time vocational, but we want him to be not, you know. As we transition, like, we're any church that looks at this and goes, okay, we're not here. Where are the areas you would start at first? You know, like, what do you think is the most important?
Well, you might want to talk to your pastor and see. And I would say this. I'll get in more trouble. I don't mind. Your pastor should be your first missionary. Churches often take glory in, oh, well, we have 5 missionaries we support, and your pastor isn't being cared for. But somehow we glory in the fact of, well, we have all these missionaries. Your pastor ought to be your first missionary. There's nothing unspiritual about that. Take care of him. And then once you have him cared for, then take on missionaries. But there is no glory in sending whatever it might be, thousands of dollars all over the world for other people, and your pastor is sitting there and the guy can barely afford to eat. Take care of him. Put him high on the list. I said that in the church one day, and a lady came out, and I didn't know her son was a missionary. She came out and she said this, "You look like you're doing all right." I said, "Well, I just had lunch. That's why." Gary.
A couple of things. We sent our pastor a couple times to see our missionaries, and that was very beneficial for him and for us as a church. The other thing I think we should realize is they don't work normal hours. I had some health problems, but so did the other people in our church, and I know my health problems seem to be in the middle of the night. Pastor Dan would show up at 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. He does that for more than just me. I was on the budget committee a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I was shocked to find out he had not gotten a raise in 10 years. And I was the one who brought it up. I'm like, guys, if he was in the working world, he would get a raise, at least cost of living. That had been overlooked. So I think that,
Amen.
that needs to be looked at.
Yeah,
And
you're
the other
so
thing we
right.
talked about is, if you put it into his retirement fund, it's taxed less than if you increase his salary. So there's some kind of creative ways that you can do that, where it's helping him financially, but not necessarily on the salary end. And we talked
Good. And that's the important thing. Talk to them. Pastor, here's what we want to do. Would you rather we do it this way, that way? Take care of them. That is not unusual. That a pastor doesn't get a raise for a period of time, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be. Something's wrong with that. And
He
so,
never said anything, he never complained.
yeah. Seth, go ahead.
Just to add to that, I mean, if your pastor doesn't get a yearly raise, you're literally giving him a pay cut every year. Because inflation, things rise, costs rise, his salary stays the same, he's taking less money every year.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Go ahead, brother.
One thing that the former church I did was good idea is they had a fund set up for study supplies. Most places where I work, all my materials are provided to me. Tools, clothing, all that stuff. I mean, things have changed with internet now, where you have more access, but there's still, whether they're gonna purchase a program or something for studying, it can still become expensive.
Yeah, thank you. I saw a hand there.
Would you apply these same ideas to trained assistants?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. Take care of them. Paul?
I'd also recommend Roth account for your pastor, for anyone. If you start putting in $7,000 a year, which is maximum this year, you can easily retire with over $4 million at 10% compounded.
Who's volunteering? Want to be in the ministry?
So, yeah, I'd recommend that for anyone. I
Yeah.
guess, working taxes.
Yeah, amen. I had one guy get mad at me. It was after I left the church, and something came up, and he said, "You got your millions." I mean, really? I think my wife maybe got it. She hid it away somewhere.
It's all tax-free, and it's all tax-free to your heirs.
Yeah, amen. Roth is an after-tax investment. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bill.
One thing that, at Hardingville that I always noticed is if there's a lot of business people attending the church and are members of the church and in meetings and things like that, they know and they see what is needed, and I've always found that about Hardingville, all the business people that were there, who, they presented that with the cost of living raise and things like that, because many times our pastor before would say, I don't want a raise, and we would say, well, you're getting one anyway.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. He was fortunate to have guys like you guys taking care of him. All right, somebody else. Jeff.
I would have just kind of double tap on what Bill just said, because your pastor will say, well, I don't feel like I can take that, or I don't feel like I should do that. And what we should say lovingly, respectfully, have the conversation is, we want you to give us everything that God can give you. So we want to remove care, strain, stress, those kinds of things, so that you can effectively minister to us and help them do that. I've been in ministries where pastors said, the insurance thing, that's too expensive, let's do this share thing. Well, Pastor, we don't want you to have, by the way, share ministries are great, but they take a lot of work. There's letters, there's prayer times, there's checks sent out that you do as a member of those programs before you even have a need that requires additional work. So thinking about, we want to set our pastor free to do the ministry that God has given him to do for us
Yeah,
is
amen.
really a great approach to help pastors understand, we can do this, we want to do this, we commit to doing this on your behalf, and we love you, but just because you say you don't want it doesn't mean you're not gonna get it.
Yeah, amen. Good.
I might add even further to that, if, I've heard at least of this, if they're, like, they don't want the raise, and there may be reasons for that, but they're taking on some of these things, if you've never done them, can be an effective way of giving them a raise without raising their salary, because you can reduce their expenses. Amen. And that can be, in some ways, a bigger impact to their bottom line, especially for something like insurance, where maybe they can get that benefit tax-free, it reduces their overall tax bill, and gives them more money in their pocket at the end of each month.
Amen. All right, our time is about going. I hope you'll think about it. I hope you'll get involved as a man. Say, I want to know what's going on. Maybe you're not a deacon, but you know, say, I want to know what's going on. What are we doing to take care of our pastor? You know, what about this? What about that? Bring it up, because if your pastor's a good guy, he's not going to be coming and asking. He's not. And so we need to be on the lookout. We need to be taking care of him. Okay. Are you throwing me away, or?
I'm helping you put focus on things you might not be thinking about at the moment.
All right. Good.
It's break time. There are remainder of snacks and coffee downstairs.